For a long time, popular culture held that by the time you hit 30, you'd have your entire life figured out, feeling stable with a good job, a nice house, a loving partnership. But nowadays, your 30s often look quite different.
Job hunt is on. This hospital website says I can earn up to $700 and all I have to do is be infected with dengue fever.
Sometimes the lives of characters in their 30s on screen can feel hilariously out of reach. But thankfully, in recent years, we've started to get many more films and shows that are willing to get honest about what it's like to be in your 30s now, the good and the less than stellar.
Welcome to the No Options Club. It's a cool club.
Yeah?
Actually, I'm in it.
Oh.
Most of America's in it. We meet on Tuesdays.
So what do movies and TV get right and wrong about life and finances in your 30s?
This adult stuff is hard, isn't it? I wonder if the rest of the 30-something gang goes through crap like this.
Being unstable in your 20s is often framed as fun and quirky, all just a part of figuring out your life. But once you hit 30, it takes on a very different sheen.
Your 20s are for wild shenanigans.
But aren't you 30?
For a long time on screen, instability and financial worry was a problem for people in their early 20s. By the time characters reached their 30s, they usually had their lives pretty together, maybe occasionally getting hit with an unwelcome surprise.
Phone bill. Carol? Carol? Carol?
But generally, things were pretty steady. Even into the late 90s and early 2000s, most characters on screen seemed to be doing pretty alright for themselves by the time they made it to the other side of their 30s crisis. And if one was still floundering, they were often specifically pointed out as the hilarious flighty one in a group of otherwise stable friends.
I spent $40,000 on shoes and I have no place to live? I will literally be the old woman who lived in her shoes.
And in many ways, this was sensible, since that was the reality for a lot of people of that age at that time. But even in more modern shows, financial difficulties of characters in their 30s are sometimes just sprinkled in to add a bit of relatability before never getting mentioned again. Like when How I Met Your Mother's Lily racked up a huge amount of credit card debt.
I have 15 credit cards and they're all maxed out.
Only for it to not really end up affecting her and Marshall's lives that much in the end. And on the one hand, it makes sense that comedy shows like How I Met Your Mother might have sought to focus more on fun than consequences. But the constant assumption that being in your 30s equals having everything figured out, or if things go wrong, being able to quickly fix everything, can make people who are getting crushed under the current reality of the world feel like they're the ones that are doing something wrong.
What do you guys live for?
What's up? What?
Like, what gets you up in the morning?
Nowadays, being in your 30s does usually mean you're done with the hunt for entry-level jobs, but that doesn't mean the struggle is over. While trying to find an entry-level job that doesn't expect you to already have 10 years of experience in your 20s is hard, finding a job in your 30s can feel equally impossible.
I have no job. I have no credit. I have no underwear.
Even though we're told that we now need to switch jobs every few years to hope to get enough of a raise to keep up with cost of living increases, actually finding those jobs can be a nightmare. Analyzing 2 reports from Georgetown University, HR Dive's Rick Seltzer concluded the reports identified 3 major barriers for young people seeking quality jobs: rising post-secondary education costs, limited access to high-quality work-based learning, and inadequate counseling and career navigation services. They said these barriers are exacerbated by discrimination.
Is this what you always wanted to do?
No, but I got this job after college and it fit my interest at the time.
It's not pie in the sky, I won't accept anything less than my dream job thinking that makes the search difficult. It's finding any job at all that pays a living wage, doesn't expect you to live in the office or join a cult, and has a functional benefits package.
I'm a bartender who's 30 years old. I don't have health insurance.
And once you do finally secure a job, then you have to live under the constant threat of getting fired or laid off, or your entire company being bought up by a venture capital firm and burned to the ground.
But it'll never be said that Garrett McNeil did not do just enough to not get fired.
A huge factor weighing people in their 30s down now that previous generations didn't have to deal with on such a crushing scale is student loan debt. According to the Institute on Assets and Social Policy at Brandeis University, having ever held student debt curtails wealth at age 30 for everyone by about $8,200, independent of the value of current student loan debt. Even if you do get that stable, well-paying job, a huge part of your paycheck will be going to paying off that loan that's been racking up interest as you've been hunting for the job that degree was supposed to secure you. And this continues to have negative knock-on effects well into your future. A survey conducted by TIA's and MIT's Age Lab found that the vast majority of participants, 84%, reported that student loans negatively impacted the amount they save for retirement. Participants with higher current student loan debt balances tended to possess less retirement savings.
Nick doesn't have a life plan. He doesn't have a day plan. I once found a note he wrote to himself that said, "Put on pants."
Another problem that can begin ratcheting up in your 30s is the fear of aging and the desire to reclaim your youth.
I was having this awful nightmare that I was 32, and then I woke up and I was 23, so relieved. And then I woke up for real, and I was 32.
Your 30s is often when you do start to see those first real signs of aging, like wrinkles that don't go away even when you're properly hydrated, and gray hairs.
Doing so much flinching, it's bad for my skin. I'm getting crow's feet. Crow's feet!
And this fear on its own certainly isn't a new phenomenon, but the amount of things you can purchase to supposedly help you slow down the aging process has skyrocketed in recent years.
Welcome back to 30 Ways I'm Leveling Up My Life in My 30s, Skincare Edition.
Now, it's not just buying a sports car or getting a new haircut, but the expectation that you'll focus nearly all of your energy and money on holding on to your youth, while making it seem effortless, of course. And since thanks to social media, we're also so much more visible to so many more people than we ever have been in history, the pressure to preserve yourself at all costs feels even higher.
Reverse aging, this video has been so highly requested on my channel. I'm 30 years old, but I really haven't aged since I was about 21, 22.
There's also the pressure for women in particular to try to avoid the ostracization that can come with aging. As AARP's Heather Tinsley Fix told Fortune, there's a much higher bar for women to appear younger. Women face a much higher bar with regard to ageism. They experience it earlier and more frequently than men. But the desire to stay looking young isn't just about aesthetics. People in their 30s just don't feel as old as society had long prescribed your 30s to be. There's a desire to keep your outside matching how you feel on the inside, whatever the cost. And on the flip side, while some things like plastic surgery procedures are incredibly expensive, smaller scale items like a thrifted dress or a nice face mask are some of the only self-care we can afford, so we have to make the most of it.
Self-Care Sunday!
We all need somewhere to lay our head, but actually affording that is becoming increasingly difficult. For a long time on screen, pretty much everyone had a pretty decent living situation, if not by virtue of the character's life, then due to the real-world necessities of filming the given show or movie. Even with just a part-time job, or even being totally unemployed, everyone still got to go home to massive apartments at the end of the day. And this has been even more true for characters in their 30s, who seemingly always live in huge multi-story homes with giant kitchens and spacious yards. And for a time, that wasn't so terribly far off from real life.
Before the 1980s, it was possible for a young person to graduate from high school, find a job that was a full-time, that paid them enough for them to be able to buy a home.
But now, things are quite different. We might have imagined our 30s playing out in Lorelei's cozy Connecticut home, only to find ourselves in more of a new girl, multiple adult roommate situation, if we're lucky.
By the time my parents were 30, they already had 2 kids. They had careers with steady paychecks, a mortgage.
As the dream of home ownership continues to slip away from many, some films and shows do, of course, continue to showcase people in their 30s living in those big TV houses, but we do also get more of that variety. From smaller living spaces to roommate setups to even having to move back home because you can't afford anything else.
They've been to college, then out in the real world, and it spit them out like a stale piece of gum, and now they're all back in their old rooms, like you.
Having children isn't the unchangeable expectation it long was. Now, plenty of people decide that that's not the right choice for them. But for those that do choose to go down the parenthood route, they're confronted with a whole new world of ever-rising costs. From prenatal care to setting up the nursery to the hospital stay to the diapers and food and clothes they seem to immediately grow out of to the astronomical daycare costs, it's a lot. And all of that is on top of the fact that given how expensive everything is, both parents often still have to work full-time on top of parenting. And in heterosexual households, this often means that the parenting and home care actually exclusively falls to the mother in addition to her job.
What's the trick to making all this work? I'm trying to stay positive. Having it all seems a little impossible.
Having kids can be wonderful and world-expanding, but it can also be draining financially and psychologically.
Children are a crushing responsibility. Happy birthday.
And things only seem to be getting worse. According to Business Insider, the cost to care for one child in the US in 2024 will be at least $25,714, which is a 41.5% increase since 2016, and costs will likely continue to go up this year. But thankfully, more films and shows have begun to show a more full picture of what it's like to be a struggling new parent, and have done away with the times where we were all meant to pretend that everything was all a breeze.
You didn't say it was gonna be this hard.
Oh, have I made this look easy to you?
When we were younger and unsure, we might have looked toward our 30s as the time we'd finally have everything together.
I suppose it won't matter when I'm 38.
And so actually getting there and realizing that that's not necessarily the case can feel scary. And the financial burdens of your 30s can be a huge drag and make it feel like you'll never be able to catch up.
You were denied a cell phone because you have the credit score of a homeless ghost.
How I got here doesn't matter.
Way more than your credit score.
But the great thing about your 30s is that even if things aren't going your way, you've already had time to work on yourself and figure out what really matters to you.
We have so much talent and excellence right here. And I felt like we didn't have enough spaces to showcase and celebrate that in this neighborhood.
So then you can focus on that and hopefully keep working towards the life you dream of, even if it doesn't end up being what you thought you'd want your 30s to be like in your 20s.
Maybe instead of running in the morning, I'll go for a walk. Slow it down a little. That seems like a good way to start the day.
That's The Take. Click here to watch a video we think you'll love, or here to check out a whole playlist of awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. And make sure to subscribe to our Patreon for exclusive new videos.